Have you ever stood in a museum, gazing at an ancient artifact behind glass, and felt that pull of mystery? That object you're looking at, carved with symbols, shaped by hands long gone, might appear to be purely ceremonial, something used only in sacred rites or offered to the gods. But what if there was more to the story? What if that beautifully crafted dagger wasn't just a symbol of power, but a precision surgical tool? What if that incense burner wasn't only for prayer, but for purifying the air during outbreaks of illness? Throughout human history, our ancestors lived in a world where nothing was wasted, and everything had purpose, often more than one. They blended the spiritual and the practical in ways that still stir our imagination today. In this video, we're going to explore 24 astonishing ritual objects that secretly served as indispensable tools in the ancient world. These aren't just curiosities, they are masterpieces of ingenuity that reveal how ritual and reality were woven together in the fabric of everyday life. From the high temples of Egypt to the nomadic camps of the steppes, from the bustling markets of Mesopotamia to the silent forests of the Americas, people found brilliant, dual-purpose solutions to the challenges of survival. A ceremonial vessel might also be a standardized measure for grain, ensuring fair trade. A sacred drum could become a long-distance communication device, warning a community of approaching danger. A ritual mask might offer protection not only from spirits but from biting insects or blinding snow. By the time we're done, you will see these objects and the people who made them in an entirely new light. You'll discover a profound and deeply human truth: that innovation isn't always about inventing something new. Sometimes it's about seeing the potential in what we already have, layering meaning upon function, and honoring the divine without ever losing sight of the practical. This is a journey into the clever, resourceful, and surprisingly familiar minds of our ancient ancestors. So come with us, let's uncover the hidden uses of these incredible artifacts and reconnect with a time when every object told a story and every ritual had a purpose. But before we explore that fascinating duality, let's take a closer look at that first object, the ceremonial dagger, to truly understand its significance. We begin our journey in the sun-baked land of ancient Egypt, where the line between the divine and the daily was often beautifully blurred. Imagine a priest not in a sterile operating room, but within the hallowed space of a temple, holding an object of immense symbolic power, the Pesesh. This wasn't a weapon of war, but its purpose was just as profound. In the sacred opening of the mouth ceremony, this blade was used to symbolically animate statues and mummies, allowing the deceased to breathe, speak, and eat in the afterlife. It was a key that unlocked eternity. Yet that very same blade, with its meticulously honed edge of flint or early copper, had a second, equally vital role. It was a surgical instrument used for precise procedures like circumcisions, which were rites of passage, and other minor surgeries. This was a time when the same individual, the priest, was often the community's healer, the keeper of both spiritual and physical well-being. The design of the Pesesh speaks volumes about this dual purpose. Its curved, sharp edge was perfect for making clean, controlled incisions, minimizing tissue damage and reducing the risk of infection. The ornate handle, often carved with religious iconography or the faces of deities, wasn't just for show. It provided the priest-surgeon with a secure, non-slip grip, essential for the steady hand required in any medical procedure. This is a perfect example of form following function, even within a ritual context. Renowned Egyptologists like Dr. Zahi Hawass have pointed out that these objects underscore a fundamental truth about ancient societies. Spirituality and science were not separate realms. A ritual was not just a prayer, it could be a practical act of healing. The ceremony itself likely served to calm the patient, placing the procedure within a framework of divine order and protection, which undoubtedly aided in the healing process. This ingenious approach meant that a single, carefully crafted object could serve the community in multiple ways, maximizing resources and embedding everyday necessities with deeper meaning. The use of such a tool undoubtedly influenced medical thought, encouraging observation, precision, and the development of techniques that would eventually lay the groundwork for more advanced surgeries. It reminds us that innovation in the ancient world was often about seeing the multiple possibilities within a single form, weaving the threads of survival and belief into a stronger, more resilient fabric of culture. Moving from the precise cuts of the ceremonial dagger, we find another brilliant fusion of faith and function in the fragrant clouds of sacred smoke. In the grand temples of Mesopotamia and the serene halls of ancient China, elaborate incense burners were far more than just beautiful accessories for prayer. While their primary role was to carry offerings to the gods and create an atmosphere of reverence, they served a second, incredibly vital purpose. They were among the world's earliest and most sophisticated air purification systems. Crafted from durable materials like bronze, ceramic, or even precious metals, these vessels were designed to smolder specific aromatic herbs and resins. Substances like sage, myrrh, frankincense, and sandalwood were chosen not only for their pleasing scents but for their potent antimicrobial and insect-repelling properties. When burned, these materials released compounds that actively cleansed the air in enclosed, crowded spaces like temples, palaces, and later, even sick rooms. Archaeologists have analyzed residues inside these ancient burners, finding chemical evidence of these purifying agents. This suggests a deliberate, understood practice of using smoke to combat illness. In an era long before the germ theory of disease, people empirically understood that certain smells correlated with healthier environments. The thick, fragrant smoke effectively reduced airborne pathogens, making gatherings safer. Furthermore, in a time without modern sanitation, these burners played a crucial role in odor control. The smoke masked the inevitable smells of crowded urban life, animal husbandry, and illness, making prolonged indoor ceremonies and community meetings more bearable and psychologically uplifting. This practice demonstrates a profound, intuitive grasp of public health, all wrapped within a spiritual ritual. The act of purification was both literal and metaphorical. As they cleansed the space for the gods, they were also sanitizing it for the people. This ingenious solution makes us wonder what other hidden challenges of daily life were seamlessly addressed through ceremony, proving that for our ancestors, spirituality was not an escape from the world but a deeper, more practical engagement with it. Now, let's shift our focus from the fragrant, cleansing smoke of ritual burners to the deep, resonant pulse of sacred drums. Across vast, open landscapes where whispers would be lost to the wind, cultures from the Aztec heartland to the frozen expanses of Siberia developed a remarkable solution for staying connected. The massive, ceremonial drums used by priests and shamans to call upon the spirits held a powerful secret. They were also sophisticated long-distance communication devices. Crafted from a single, hollowed-out log or a tightly stretched animal hide, these instruments were engineered to produce low-frequency sounds that could travel for miles, skimming over valleys and cutting through dense forests with a clarity that human voices could never achieve. This wasn't just about making noise, it was about encoding vital information into the very fabric of ritual. Ethnographers studying these traditions have documented complex rhythmic languages. A specific, rapid series of beats might signal an impending raid, sending a wave of preparation through a village. A slower, more deliberate pattern could call the community to an important gathering or a ceremonial feast. Another distinct rhythm might warn of a natural disaster, like a wildfire or an approaching storm, giving people precious time to seek safety. This system transformed a sacred object into a lifeline, a central nervous system for the entire community. The act of playing the drum was therefore layered with profound responsibility. The drummer was both a spiritual conduit and a vital broadcaster of news. This duality fostered an incredible sense of unity and collective security. Everyone understood the codes, everyone listened for the drum, and everyone knew that their safety depended on this blend of tradition and practicality. It ensured that the sacred object was never distant or irrelevant. It was woven into the daily rhythm of life, a constant, familiar presence that could instantly transform from a tool of worship into a tool of survival. This ingenious approach to communication hints at a deeper truth about how ancient societies were organized, using the tools of ritual to maintain order, coordinate action, and protect the collective, long before the invention of modern technology. From the resonant communication of sacred drums, we now turn to an object that literally shaped the face of ritual, the ceremonial mask. Far more than a simple disguise for the spirit world, these intricate creations served as a masterclass in survival, blending profound spiritual meaning with hard-nosed practicality. Across the globe, from the frozen Arctic expanses of the Inuit to the dense, vibrant forests of West Africa, communities crafted masks that were as much about protecting the body as they were about connecting with the divine. These were not fragile artifacts kept under glass. They were durable, multi-purpose tools born from an intimate understanding of the environment. Imagine an Inuit hunter preparing for a ceremonial dance in the relentless glare of the spring sun. The mask he wears, perhaps carved from driftwood or fashioned from supple sealskin, is adorned with potent symbols of the spirits he hopes to honor. But look closer. The eye slits are not just artistically placed, they are intentionally narrow, designed to cut the blinding glare of sun on snow, preventing temporary snow blindness that could be disastrous in the hunting grounds. This is a perfect fusion of form and function, where a spiritual symbol becomes a vital piece of protective equipment. In other parts of the world, the practical application was even more direct. Many African masks, incredibly elaborate and often fearsome in their appearance, were constructed using specific types of wood or treated with natural oils that naturally repelled mosquitoes and other insects. In regions where mosquito-borne illnesses were a constant threat, wearing such a mask during lengthy nighttime ceremonies provided a crucial layer of defense, allowing the community to gather and celebrate without succumbing to disease. This practical ingenuity extended into the realm of conflict and hunting. The terrifying visages carved into these masks, depicting wrathful demons, powerful animal spirits, or ancestral guardians, were not merely for theatrical effect. Anthropologists widely believe these frightening designs served as a potent form of psychological warfare. A warrior wearing a mask intended to embody a terrifying spirit would appear less human and more supernatural, potentially shaking the confidence of an opposing force or causing a predatory animal to hesitate. This added a layer of defense that was purely mental yet incredibly effective. The material choice itself was a testament to resourcefulness. Bone, leather, wood, and woven fibers, these were not just readily available, they were materials that offered genuine protection from the elements. A heavy wooden mask could shield the face from biting winds, while a leather one might offer insulation. This brilliant blending of purpose meant that a single, carefully constructed object could fulfill multiple essential roles. It was a spiritual conduit, a weather guard, a pest repellent, and a psychological shield all in one. This approach reveals a breathtaking level of human ingenuity, demonstrating that our ancestors did not see their environment as something to be conquered, but as a partner to be understood and adapted to. Every element of the natural world, from the type of wood available to the behavior of local animals, was observed, respected, and incorporated into their daily and spiritual lives. The ritual mask stands as a powerful testament to the idea that the most enduring cultural symbols are those that are not only meaningful but also profoundly useful. Now consider the profound trust required for a society to function, especially in its earliest, most fragile stages of commerce and law. In the bustling marketplaces of ancient Sumer or along the organized streets of the Indus Valley cities, fairness wasn't just an ideal, it was the very glue that held the economy together. This is where we encounter our next object, a beautiful fusion of faith and fairness, the ceremonial vessel as a standardized measure. Imagine an ornate jar, perhaps dedicated to a god of grain or a goddess of the harvest, used in temple rituals for libations. Its surface might be carved with intricate scenes of deities, making it a sacred object. Yet this very same jar, often with carefully inscribed lines or a specific, unvarying capacity, would be brought into the marketplace or the royal storehouse. It became the definitive standard for measuring out barley, oil, or even water for mixing mortar in public construction projects. This was a stroke of genius. By embedding the standard measure within a sacred object, ancient leaders and priests were essentially placing commerce under divine supervision. You couldn't easily cheat your neighbor by using a smaller bowl if the official measure was this specific, ritually significant vessel kept in the temple. To tamper with it would not only be a crime against the king but a sin against the gods. Archaeologists have found these standardized vessels in both religious and secular contexts, proving their dual life. In a world without national standards institutes or digital scales, these objects were the ultimate arbiters of fairness. They ensured that a farmer received a just price for his crop, that a family's grain tax was calculated accurately, and that every brick in a city wall was made with a consistent amount of material, ensuring structural integrity. This practice transformed a sacred object into an instrument of order, a tangible representation of trust that everyone in the community could rely upon. It's not a stretch to see how this physical embodiment of fairness would directly influence the world's earliest written laws, like the Code of Hammurabi, which meticulously outlined standards and punishments for commercial dishonesty. The very concept of a just weight and a just measure, a theme that echoes through millennia of human history, likely has its roots in these beautifully pragmatic ritual objects. They show us that ancient civilizations understood that for a society to thrive, its spiritual and economic foundations needed to be built on the same bedrock of trust and precision. This seamless blend of the spiritual and the practical reaches a breathtaking level of sophistication with our next object, the divination board. Imagine a Polynesian navigator, hundreds of years before modern instruments, preparing for a voyage across thousands of miles of open ocean. His most vital tool isn't a compass or a sextant, but a sacred chart, a physical representation of the world woven from sticks and shells, used to consult the ancestors and the gods. To the uninitiated, these objects, like the intricate Ifá trays of West Africa, appear to be purely mystical diagrams covered in a seemingly chaotic array of patterns and symbols. But to the trained expert, they were something far more profound, highly accurate encrypted maps and navigational computers. The genius of these systems lay in their duality. The very act of using them for divination was a sophisticated method of data preservation and transmission. a priest interpreting the patterns cast on an ephod tray wasn't just predicting the future, he was recounting generations of accumulated geographical knowledge. The symbols might represent specific mountain passes, the locations of freshwater springs, or the migratory routes of animals, information absolutely critical for traders crossing the Sahara or communities planning a seasonal move. In the Pacific, the legendary stick charts of the Marshall Islands are a perfect example. Constructed from palm ribs and shells, these charts mapped the complex interplay of ocean swells and currents around islands. The curved sticks represented wave patterns, and the shells marked the islands themselves. A navigator would feel the rhythm of the waves against his canoe and compare that live data to the patterns on his sacred chart, using it to pinpoint his location in a featureless seascape. This knowledge was so precious that it was often considered a form of sacred power, passed down through select lineages under the guise of ritual. By embedding this critical survival information within a spiritual practice, communities ensured its accuracy remained uncorrupted, and its teaching remained a consistent, revered tradition. It was a way of turning empirical observation into a kind of living, breathing library, protected from loss or change by the power of ceremony. This makes us wonder what other vast repositories of knowledge, from botanical medicine to historical records, were secretly stored not in books or buildings, but in the rituals themselves, safeguarded for centuries in the most ingenious way imaginable. This seamless integration of sacred knowledge into the very foundations of civilization brings us to an object that quite literally laid the groundwork for some of the ancient world's most breathtaking achievements, the ritual staff. In the hands of an Egyptian or Mesopotamian priest, this was far more than a badge of office. It was a sophisticated precision instrument, the ancient equivalent of a surveyor's theodolite and a master builder's blueprint, all rolled into one. These staffs, meticulously crafted and often inscribed with sacred geometry and standardized units of measurement like the royal cubit, were the essential tools for transforming the chaotic wilderness into ordered, productive land and for raising monumental structures that reached for the heavens. The annual flooding of the Nile, while bringing life-giving silt to the fields, also had a frustrating side effect. It completely erased the boundary markers between individual plots of land. Imagine the disputes that would arise every year as farmers tried to reclaim their property. The solution was both brilliantly practical and deeply spiritual. Priests acting as surveyors for the state would use these marked staffs to re-establish the boundaries with divine authority. The process itself was a ritual, ensuring that the redistribution of land was seen not as a bureaucratic chore but as an act of cosmic order, or mat, restoring balance and fairness to the community. This same precision was then scaled up to an almost unimaginable degree in the construction of the pyramids. Egyptologists like Dr. Kate Spence have demonstrated how the alignment of the Great Pyramid of Giza with such incredible accuracy, its sides facing almost perfectly true north, south, east, and west, was likely achieved using these very staffs in conjunction with observations of the circumpolar stars. The priest-architect would plant the staff in the ground and use it as a sighting tool, tracking the movement of specific stars to find true north before laying out the massive foundation square. This means the world's most iconic tomb was oriented using a simple ceremonial object and the night sky, a perfect marriage of astronomy, faith, and engineering. The staff itself was a physical manifestation of this connection. Its length, the cubit, was not an arbitrary measure. It was derived from the proportions of the human body, typically the length from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, linking human scale to the divine. In Mesopotamia, similar measuring rods were used to plan vast irrigation networks and to lay out the precisely right angled grids of their great ziggurats. This duality fundamentally shaped the development of early engineering by embedding mathematical and geometric principles at the very heart of cultural and religious expression. You didn't just learn math for its own sake, you learned it to build a proper temple, to please the gods, and to organize a functioning society. The ritual staff ensured that the sacred and the scientific were one and the same, driving innovation forward under the auspices of divine will and creating a legacy of architectural wonder that continues to astonish us today. But the ingenuity of ancient tools wasn't limited to silent measurement or grand construction. It also filled the air with purposeful sound. After exploring the silent precision of surveying staffs, we encounter an object that used rhythm and noise to shape the natural world, the sacred rattle. In numerous Native American and African agricultural societies, the vibrant, rhythmic shaking that accompanied dances and spiritual ceremonies was far more than just music for the gods. Those beautifully decorated gourds or intricately woven baskets filled with seeds, stones, or shells were also highly effective tools for managing the environment. The connection is brilliantly logical. The same sounds that were believed to call upon rain spirits or honor ancestral guardians also produced a specific acoustic profile that animals instinctively reacted to. For pastoral communities, a trained herdsman could use distinct shaking patterns to direct the movement of livestock. A rapid, insistent rhythm might signal the animals to move forward, while a softer, more sporadic sound could cause them to stop or turn, all without a single shouted command that might startle them. This made moving large herds through difficult terrain a quieter, more controlled process. In the cultivated fields, the practical application was even more direct. The sudden, sharp clatter produced by these rattles was highly effective at startling birds and other crop-eating pests, causing them to flee from the fields. This provided a non-lethal, early form of pest control that protected the vital food supply without harming the local ecosystem. Ethnoarchaeologists, by studying the construction of these artifacts, have found that they were not made haphazardly. The choice of materials was deliberate. A dried gourd created a different resonance than a leather pouch, and the type of filler, whether hard seeds or smooth pebbles, produced a unique acoustic signature. This suggests a deep, empirical understanding of sound dynamics, where the rattle was engineered to maximize its scare effect on specific pests or its guiding influence on certain animals, all while its external surface was adorned with symbols that connected its use to a larger cosmic order. This approach represents a profoundly sustainable model of resource management. There was no need for manufactured pesticides or complex fencing. A tool that was central to cultural and spiritual life also performed an essential agricultural function. It reflects a worldview where human activity was not separate from nature but was an integrated part of it. The ritual ensured that practices beneficial for survival were regularly performed and culturally reinforced, weaving environmental stewardship directly into the fabric of spiritual duty. This seamless blend of purpose shows that for our ancestors, a successful harvest depended as much on maintaining a good relationship with the natural and spiritual worlds as it did on sunlight and rain. From the rhythmic clatter of sacred rattles that managed the natural world, we turn to an object that mastered one of nature's most fundamental elements, light itself. The ritual mirror, often a dazzling disk of highly polished obsidian, bronze, or even gold, is a stunning example of an object whose spiritual significance was perfectly matched by its practical power. In the hands of a Mayan priest or a Chinese shaman, this was not a simple vanity item. It was a sophisticated piece of optical technology, a sacred portal that could capture the sun's very essence and bend it to human will. In divination practices across Mesoamerica, these black, glass-like obsidian mirrors were believed to be gateways to the spirit world. a priest would gaze into its depths, not to see his own reflection, but to see visions of the future, to communicate with deities, or to diagnose spiritual illnesses. The mirror was a tool for seeing the unseen. This profound spiritual use, however, was built upon a foundation of remarkable physical properties. To create a surface so flawlessly smooth and reflective required an incredibly advanced understanding of polishing techniques, a form of precise, iterative craftsmanship that itself bordered on the magical. But step outside the temple, and that same object transformed into something entirely different. A messenger high in the Andes or a lookout stationed on a coastal cliff could use a polished metal mirror to flash signals across vast, impassable distances. By angling the mirror to catch the sun, and then using a hand to break the light into short and long bursts, a skilled operator could send complex messages with a speed and clarity that smoke signals or runners could never match. This was an early form of wireless communication, allowing for the coordination of military movements, the relaying of important news between villages, or the signaling of a ship's approach. The mirror's second, even more vital function was as a fire starter. The concentration of the sun's rays through a curved, polished surface onto a small point of tinder is a classic science experiment, but for ancient peoples it was a reliable survival skill. For cultures that revered the sun as a god, the act of using a sacred mirror to literally pull fire from the heavens was the ultimate fusion of ritual and reality. It turned a ceremony into a practical act of creation, providing the essential flame for cooking, warmth, and protection during long pilgrimages or rituals that required a sacred fire to be lit in a specific, symbolic way. This blurring of the line between magic and science is perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these objects. When a priest used a mirror to start a fire for a sacrifice, was it a miracle or physics? The answer for them was likely both. This empirical tinkering with light and reflection, driven by spiritual need, laid the groundwork for later optical discoveries. The fundamental principles demonstrated in these ritual mirrors, reflection, refraction, and the focusing of light, are the very same principles that would centuries later lead to the development of telescopes, microscopes, and eyeglasses. The desire to see the messages of the gods or to harness the sun's power ultimately taught us how to see the stars and the cells in our own bodies. The ritual mirror stands as a powerful testament to the idea that the quest for spiritual understanding has often been the very engine of practical innovation, proving that the line between a sacred object and a scientific instrument is often much thinner than we might think. Now let's shift our perspective from the brilliant, sun-catching surface of ritual mirrors to an object designed to protect the very person wearing it, the ceremonial headdress. When we picture these magnificent creations, the towering feathered mahol of Hawaiian chiefs, the fearsome horned helmets of Viking rulers, or the elaborate beaded regalia of Native American spiritual leaders, it's easy to see them as pure theater, stunning displays of status and spiritual connection designed to awe onlookers. But to dismiss them as merely decorative is to miss a crucial layer of their genius. These were, in fact, some of the most sophisticated pieces of multi-purpose protective gear ever devised, masterfully blending defense, environmental adaptation, and psychological warfare into a single, powerful symbol. The materials themselves tell a story of profound practicality. A Viking ceremonial helmet, often imagined as a simple horned costume piece, was in reality a formidable piece of armor. Crafted from iron or hardened leather, its primary purpose was to protect the skull from the crushing blow of an axe or sword in the chaos of battle. The so-called horns, a subject of much debate among historians, may have been designed to deflect weapon strikes away from the center of the head, or perhaps to make the wearer's head a more difficult target to hit squarely. Similarly, the feathered cloaks and helmets of Pacific Islanders were far more than just vibrant displays. The dense, layered construction of thousands of tiny feathers, meticulously tied to a fiber base, created a durable, flexible shell that was remarkably effective at shielding the wearer from the intense tropical sun and sudden, drenching rain showers. This was high-performance weatherproofing, achieved with locally sourced, sustainable materials, but the true stroke of brilliance lies in the psychological dimension. An imposing headdress dramatically alters the silhouette of the wearer, making them appear larger, more powerful, and less human. On the battlefield, this was a terrifying advantage. A warrior chief bearing down on his enemies, transformed into a towering, supernatural figure by his headdress, could instill panic and break the enemy's line before a single blow was struck. Within the community, that same imposing appearance commanded immediate respect and authority during rituals, reinforcing the social hierarchy and focusing collective attention. This evolution from practical need to cultural icon is a fascinating process. Anthropologists believe that the earliest forms of these items were likely very simple and purely functional: a basic leather cap for protection, a wide-brimmed hat for shade. But as societies developed, these utilitarian objects became canvases for cultural expression. Success in battle or a bountiful harvest might be commemorated by adding a new feather, a carving, or a precious metal ornament. Over generations, the practical base became adorned with layer upon layer of meaning, history, and spiritual significance, until the object itself became an irreplaceable symbol of identity and power. This journey gives us incredible insight into the very evolution of personal armor. It suggests that our desire to protect ourselves physically and our drive to project power and identity are deeply intertwined. The ceremonial headdress wasn't just a precursor to the medieval knight's helm. It was its complete conceptual ancestor, embodying the idea that the best protection is a combination of strong materials, smart design, and an even stronger presence. It reminds us that the most enduring cultural artifacts are those that don't just serve one purpose, but instead answer many of humanity's deepest needs at once. After exploring the imposing, multi-purpose headdresses that protected leaders from both physical and psychological harm, we now turn to a far more humble, yet equally vital object: the ritual bowl. This unassuming vessel, often resting quietly in the corner of a temple or held in the hands of a priest during a purification rite, holds within its worn interior a story of profound integration. In countless ancient societies, from the highlands of Peru to the river valleys of China, the stone or ceramic bowls used for sacred offerings were rarely single-purpose. Their true genius lay in a seamless duality. By day, they might hold grain or water for a deity. By night, they became an essential mortar for grinding the very materials that sustained the community's health and culture. Archaeologists have become detectives of residue, and their findings are telling. A bowl discovered in a temple crypt might bear the microscopic traces of ochre and charcoal, evidence that it was used to grind pigments for sacred body paint or to decorate ritual objects. That same bowl, or one remarkably similar found in a healer's dwelling, might also contain the faint chemical fingerprints of willow bark, a natural source of salicylic acid, the active component in aspirin, or poppy seeds for pain relief, or a mixture of herbs known to fight infection. This wasn't a case of mundane objects being borrowed for a ceremony. It was a fundamental design philosophy where the sacred and the practical were two sides of the same coin. This integration had a transformative effect on the development of early knowledge systems. In the realm of pharmacology, the ritual act of preparing a healing poultice or a therapeutic drink within a sacred vessel elevated medicine from a simple folk practice to a divine art. The priest or healer wasn't just mixing plants, they were conducting a ceremony, invoking spiritual forces to aid in the healing process. This ceremonial framework likely encouraged meticulousness and the careful recording of recipes, which plants, in what proportions, ground for how long, laying the groundwork for the first formal pharmacopoeias. The bowl itself, through its ritual use, became a symbol of this trusted knowledge. In the world of art, the connection is just as strong. The vibrant colors that brought temple walls, statues, and ceremonial garments to life were often considered sacred, their creation a ritual in itself. Grinding lapis lazuli for brilliant blue or cinnabar for a potent red in a consecrated bowl transformed a physical process into a spiritual one. The resulting pigments weren't just paint, they were a physical manifestation of prayer, embedding the artwork with meaning and power that went far beyond mere decoration. This practice ensured that the techniques for creating these lasting colors were preserved and perfected within the protected, revered space of the temple, directly influencing the longevity and brilliance of ancient art that still captivates us today. The ritual bowl, therefore, was more than a tool. It was a crucible where practicality and belief were fused together, catalyzing advancements in both science and art by ensuring that the vital work of healing and creation was treated with the utmost reverence and care. While the grand ceremonial headdress protected the body and the ritual bowl ground the medicines that healed it, our next object reveals a far more direct and visceral connection between the sacred and the sustenance of daily life, the ritual knife. This is perhaps one of the most potent examples of ancient practicality, where an object charged with the profound responsibility of communicating with the gods was also the very same tool that put food on the table. Across the ancient world, from the sun-drenched temples of the Aztecs to the philosophical sanctuaries of ancient Greece, the blades used in the most solemn sacrifices were never allowed to grow dusty between ceremonies. They were, by necessity, the workhorses of the community. The Aztec tecpatl, a razor-sharp knife crafted from volcanic glass or obsidian, is a perfect case study. In the hands of a priest atop a pyramid, this blade performed the most sacred of duties, its impossibly sharp edge far keener than even the best forged steel, making the precise cuts required in ritual sacrifice. Yet, that same lethal sharpness made it an unparalleled tool for daily tasks. An Aztec farmer would use an identical tecpatl to expertly harvest ears of maize without damaging the stalk, to meticulously prune fruit trees for a better yield, or to clean and butcher the game that would feed his family. The material itself was a marvel of natural engineering. Obsidian can be knapped to a molecular edge, making it perfect for the fine, clean cuts needed in both ritual and butchery. Similarly, the Greek machaira, a distinctively curved blade often depicted in scenes of animal sacrifice to the Olympian gods, had a design that was as functional as it was symbolic. The inward curve of the blade was not merely for dramatic effect, it was expertly designed for the practicalities of animal processing. The shape allowed a butcher, or a priest acting as one, to efficiently skin a hide, disjoint limbs, and separate meat from bone with a smooth, pulling motion that maximized leverage and minimized effort. This design efficiency meant that a single, well-made tool could perform a vast array of tasks, from the spiritual to the brutally mundane. This practice reveals an incredibly pragmatic and sustainable approach to resource management. In a world where the smelting of metals was labor-intensive and required specialized knowledge, a community could not afford to have a set of special occasion tools that sat idle most of the time. Every object had to earn its keep. By using the same knife for sacrifice and for harvest, ancient societies were practicing a form of extreme economy of scale long before the term was ever invented. It meant that the finest craftsmanship and the best materials were invested in objects that would see constant, varied use, ensuring the entire community benefited from the skill of its best artisans. This duality also deeply influenced the social and spiritual fabric of these cultures. The act of butchering a sacrificial animal was not seen as a separate, profane activity. It was a continuation of the ritual. The animal was a gift to the gods, and the subsequent sharing of its meat among the people was a form of divine communion. The same knife that facilitated that spiritual exchange then went on to harvest the grains that would become the bread for the next day's meal. This created a powerful, tangible link between the divine and the domestic, a constant reminder that the gods were present not just in the temple, but in the field, the orchard, and the home. The ethnographic record shows that these knives were often cherished heirlooms passed down through generations. They weren't just inherited for their material value, but for the accumulated history and spiritual significance they carried. A son wielding his father's sacrificial knife to prune the family vines was not just performing a chore. He was connecting with his ancestors and upholding a tradition that honored the gods through the practical, life-sustaining work of cultivation. This reveals a worldview where there was no sharp divide between the sacred and the secular. Every cut, whether in ritual or in harvest, was an act of participation in the cycle of life, death, and renewal that sustained the entire community. This remarkable fusion of spirituality and medicine brings us to an object that truly embodies the concept of healing as both an art and a science, the ritual mask. Far beyond their role in ceremonies or storytelling, certain masks served as sophisticated, multi-functional medical instruments, ingeniously designed to address both the physical and psychological dimensions of pain. In numerous shamanic traditions across the Amazon basin, Siberia, and parts of Africa, the healer's mask was a vital piece of therapeutic technology, a tangible link between the seen and unseen worlds that offered very real relief to the suffering. The design of these masks often incorporated a brilliant practical feature: small pouches or compartments sewn into the interior or around the mouth area. These weren't for decoration. They were carefully designed reservoirs meant to hold specific dried herbs or powdered plants known for their potent analgesic and psychoactive properties. As the healer wore the mask and breathed deeply during a ritual, their own breath would gently warm and activate these compounds, releasing a controlled, inhalable vapor directly toward the patient. This method allowed for the administration of natural anesthetics like tobacco, datura, or other local plants with pain-relieving qualities, offering a primitive but effective form of sedation that could make surgical procedures or the setting of a broken bone more bearable. The psychological impact of these masks was equally, if not more, important. The journey into a healing trance often began the moment the patient laid eyes on the mask. Its appearance was deliberately crafted to be awe-inspiring, even terrifying, featuring exaggerated features, animalistic elements, or the visages of powerful spirits. This fearsome facade wasn't meant to simply frighten. It was a calculated tool to shift the patient's consciousness. By confronting a powerful, supernatural image, the patient's mind was jarred out of its ordinary state of fear and pain and into an altered state of perception where suggestion and belief held immense power. In this heightened state, the patient became far more receptive to the healer's suggestions, the rhythmic chanting, and the overall narrative of the healing ritual. The mask, therefore, acted as a key that unlocked the mind's own innate ability to manage pain and facilitate healing, a practice that demonstrates an ancient, intuitive grasp of what we now call the placebo effect and psychosomatic medicine. The healer, transformed by the mask into a conduit for divine power, could then perform procedures that would have been intolerable under normal circumstances. This incredible blend of theater and therapy suggests that these ancient practitioners understood a fundamental truth that modern medicine is still embracing, that healing is not merely a mechanical process but a holistic one, where the mind's belief is a powerful catalyst for the body's recovery. Pioneering ethnobotanists like Dr. Richard Evans Schultz spent decades documenting these practices deep in the Amazon, carefully recording how indigenous healers used masked rituals to administer and enhance the effects of their powerful plant-based pharmacopoeia. The legacy of these methods is subtly woven into the fabric of modern medicine. The entire concept of pre-operative sedation, the calming of a patient before surgery, and the importance of a reassuring, confident bedside manner can be seen as a formalized scientific echo of this ancient wisdom. The ritual mask stands as a profound testament to the idea that the most effective healing often occurs at the intersection of chemistry and belief, where a sacred object becomes a delivery system for both medicine and hope. These sacred cords, often simple lengths of rope made from twisted hemp, flax, or leather, were far more than symbolic accessories. In the hands of a Vedic priest in ancient India, a cord known as a yajñapavita or sacrificial thread was used to demarcate and consecrate a sacred space for a ritual, a practice that required absolute geometric precision. But that same cord, with knots meticulously tied at intervals representing a standardized unit of length like the angular or the haster, would then be used by the same community's master builders. It became the essential measuring tool for laying out the foundation of a temple, ensuring its walls were perfectly square and its proportions aligned with cosmic principles as outlined in sacred architectural texts like the Vastu Shastras. The integrity of the entire structure, believed to house the divine, depended on the accuracy of this knotted cord. Similarly, among the Celtic Druids, cords were central to astrological and land divination rituals, used to chart star movements and define sacred groves. Yet these very same ropes, with their pre-measured lengths, were indispensable for practical tasks like constructing sturdy, seaworthy coracle boats or for precisely dividing agricultural plots among families. This dual use transformed a spiritual object into a fundamental instrument of engineering and social order. By embedding the standard unit of measurement within a ritual object, these cultures ensured that fairness and accuracy were not just bureaucratic concepts but were sanctified by divine authority. You couldn't cheat your neighbor with a shorter measuring cord if the official standard was the one blessed by the gods and kept by the high priest. This practice was crucial for the expansion and stability of ancient civilizations. It allowed for the replication of architectural styles across vast territories, as seen in the consistent proportions of Hindu temples across Southeast Asia, creating a unified cultural identity. In maritime societies, the use of standardized, knotted cords for rigging ships and measuring hulls ensured vessel safety on long trading voyages, which were the lifeblood of economic expansion. The sacred cord, therefore, was a tool of trust and precision, a physical manifestation of a shared standard that enabled communities to build taller, sail farther, and organize themselves more complexly, all under the watchful eye of the deities they believed had provided the measure in the first place. While the sacred cord provided the precise measurements to build grand structures, ensuring those spaces remained comfortable and safe for the community inside required a different kind of ingenious tool. Step into the crowded courtyard of an ancient Egyptian temple during a high festival, or into a humid ceremonial hall in imperial China. The air would be thick, still, and buzzing with insects, conditions that could make any lengthy ritual unbearable or even hazardous to health. This is where we find our next object, a masterpiece of elegant problem-solving, the ritual fan. Far from being mere decorative accessories waved by attendants, these elaborate objects were, in fact, highly effective climate control and public health devices, perfectly disguised as symbols of status and divinity. In Egypt, the great flabella massive fans, often crafted from ostrich feathers, mounted on long, golden poles, were carried in the retinues of pharaohs and high priests. Their primary symbolic role was to shade the ruler, a living god, from the common sun, and to generate a gentle breeze that signified the breath of the gods themselves. But the practical effect was immediate and vital. The constant, slow waving of these large fans created a continuous movement of air, cooling the skin of those in the densely packed space and providing a precious degree of relief from the oppressive heat. This wasn't just about luxury, it was about maintaining order and focus during ceremonies that could last for hours. A comfortable congregation was an attentive one. Similarly, in many Asian traditions, particularly in China and Japan, fans became central to both courtly and religious ritual. Those beautifully painted folding fans made from sandalwood or paper, and the fixed fans or uchiwa, often woven from plant fibers, served a dual purpose that was absolutely essential. The gentle motion of the fan certainly provided a cooling breeze, but perhaps more importantly, it was a relentless defense against flies, mosquitoes, and other flying insects. In an era before screened windows, and in regions where mosquito-borne illnesses like malaria and dengue were a constant threat, this was not a trivial function. The fan was a first line of defense. A skilled attendant, positioned behind a dignitary or a priest, would use a specific flicking motion to constantly disrupt the flight paths of insects, creating an invisible barrier of moving air that pests were reluctant to cross. The materials chosen for these fans reveal a deep understanding of their environment. Ostrich feathers used in Egypt were not just opulent. Their structure and lightness made them exceptionally efficient at moving large volumes of air with minimal effort. In East Asia, the choice of woven fibers or specific types of paper created a broad, solid surface that was perfect for generating a stronger, more directed breeze or for effectively swatting away more persistent bugs. Some cultures even took this a step further by impregnating the fans with subtle, natural insect-repelling fragrances like citronella or cedar, adding a chemical deterrent to the physical one. This brilliant blending of beauty and utility offers a profound lesson in ancient climate adaptation. It shows a society that did not simply endure its environment, but actively shaped the immediate microclimate around its people using the materials and technologies available. There was no need for complex machinery. The solution was elegant, human-powered, and seamlessly integrated into the ceremonial pageantry. The aesthetic value of the fan, its carved handle, its vibrant paintings, its precious materials elevated the practical act of cooling and pest control into a dignified, almost sacred duty. This reflects a worldview where addressing human comfort was not seen as separate from spiritual practice, but was a necessary part of creating a space worthy of the divine. The ritual fan teaches us that the ancients were masters of holistic design, where every element, no matter how beautiful, served a purpose, and every problem, no matter how mundane, could be solved with creativity and grace. Now consider the profound challenge of marking time's passage in a world without digital displays or mechanical clocks, where the sun and moon were the only reliable guides. This is where our next object casts a flickering but brilliant light on ancient ingenuity, the ceremonial lamp. Far more than simple sources of illumination, these vessels of flame, from the iconic seven-branched Jewish menorah to the ubiquitous Roman oil lamps found across the ancient world, were sophisticated, dual-purpose instruments that served as both spiritual beacons and the world's earliest domestic timekeeping devices. Their design was a marvel of practical physics. A typical lamp consisted of a reservoir to hold a measured amount of oil, often olive oil for its clean burn, and a wick, typically made from flax or papyrus, that drew the fuel upward to create a steady, controlled flame. The key to their timekeeping function lay in this predictable consumption. An individual or a community could carefully measure a specific volume of oil into the lamp at dusk, knowing from experience that it would burn for a precise number of hours, perhaps until the middle of the night or just before dawn. The lamp itself became a slow-burning candle clock, its diminishing light a silent, visual hourglass marking the passage of the night. This allowed for a remarkable degree of time management in the domestic and communal sphere. A scholar could gauge how long he had read by the lamp's light. A household could coordinate nighttime activities or know when to change a watch, and the entire rhythm of evening life could be structured around the predictable life of a flame. This practicality was beautifully interwoven with spiritual discipline. The daily ritual of lighting the lamp was itself a powerful timekeeping act. In Jewish tradition, the lighting of the Sabbath lamps just before sunset on Friday evening precisely marked the transition from the secular week into sacred time. In Roman households, the kindling of the evening lamp signaled the start of the hora de cubita, the time for retiring and dining. This created a dependable daily rhythm, a series of anchors in the flow of time that gave structure and order to life. The lamp's light also had a profound symbolic dimension, representing divine presence, wisdom, and the victory of order over chaos, themes common across many religions. But this symbolism was grounded in a very tangible benefit. The lamp's light literally pushed back the darkness, enabling activities to continue after sunset. This extended the useful day for crafts, reading, socializing, and study, effectively expanding human productivity and enriching cultural life. The flickering flame of a common oil lamp, therefore, was a quiet engine of progress. Historians see in these simple objects the clear precursors to more precise timekeeping devices. The fundamental principle of measuring a consistent, consumable resource, whether it was oil, water in a clepsydra, or sand in an hourglass, to mark time's passage was established and refined through these everyday rituals. This constant, habitual engagement with measured time naturally spurred a desire for greater accuracy, which would eventually lead to the development of mechanical clocks. Furthermore, the need to coordinate these religious rituals with celestial events deeply influenced the development of calendars. Knowing exactly when to light the lamps for a specific festival required an understanding of lunar phases and solar cycles. This necessity drove the meticulous astronomical observations that allowed priests and scholars to create increasingly sophisticated calendars, aligning human rituals with the cosmic order. The humble ceremonial lamp, often seen as a simple article of faith, was in fact a cornerstone in humanity's long journey to measure and master time itself. The piercing, melodic call of a ritual whistle cuts through the air, a sound that feels both ancient and alive. In the hands of a Native American hunter concealed in a dense forest or an oceanic navigator on a vast, open sea, this small, often beautifully carved instrument was a powerful tool of survival, masquerading as a ceremonial noisemaker. Crafted from the very essence of their environment, a hollowed bird bone, a piece of resonant hardwood, or carefully fired clay, these whistles were acoustic marvels of their time. Their primary function in rituals was to call upon animal spirits or to mimic the voices of ancestral guides, creating a sacred soundscape that connected the physical and spiritual worlds. But this spiritual connection was built upon a foundation of profound practical knowledge and necessity. The same whistle that perfectly imitated the plaintive cry of a wounded deer during a ritual dance could be used the next morning to lure that very animal within range of a hunter's spear. The accuracy of the mimicry was not just artistic, it was a matter of life and death, requiring generations of careful observation to perfect the pitch, timbre, and rhythm of specific animal calls. This deep understanding of bioacoustics allowed hunters to attract prey with an efficiency that silent stalking alone could never achieve, turning a spiritual object into a key component of the community's food security. Beyond the hunt, these instruments served as an ingenious and discreet communication network. In the complex social structures of many indigenous cultures, specific whistle patterns could convey complex messages across long distances or through dense, visually obstructed terrain. A series of short, sharp bursts might signal the location of a successful hunt, calling other members of the party to assist with the carcass. A different, more urgent rhythm could serve as a silent alarm for an approaching storm or a rival group, allowing for coordination and retreat without alerting the potential threat with shouted warnings. This was a form of encrypted communication long before the concept existed, where the meaning of the sounds was known only to the initiated members of the community. The whistle's sound traveled clearly and could be heard from much farther away than the human voice, yet it was far more difficult for an outsider to pinpoint the location of the source, providing a crucial tactical advantage. This application showcases a stunningly adaptive form of creativity, where the need for stealth and safety directly influenced the development of acoustic technology. The very act of crafting the whistle was an exercise in early sound engineering. Artisans would carefully select materials for their resonant properties, hollow out chambers to specific dimensions, and sometimes even incorporate small pellets or channels to create a trilling or warbling effect that more closely mimicked the complex calls of birds or mammals. This empirical experimentation with sound vibration, resonance, and amplification represents the foundational principles of acoustics. It reveals that the origins of this field of science are not solely found in the halls of ancient Greek philosophers, but also in the forests and on the shores where everyday survival depended on a sophisticated, working understanding of how sound behaves. The ritual whistle, therefore, stands as a testament to the idea that some of our most advanced understandings of the natural world were first developed not for abstract theory, but for the most practical and spiritual needs of community life. This ingenious device reminds us that technology and belief were never separate paths, but were woven together into a single, stronger strand of human innovation. After exploring the ingenious ways ancient societies used sound and light for communication and survival, we now turn to an object that represents the very essence of portability and practicality, the sacred basket. In a world without synthetic materials or mass-produced containers, the humble woven basket was a triumph of engineering and artistry, an object so vital that it seamlessly bridged the gap between the spiritual and the economic realms. Imagine a pilgrim setting out on a long journey to a distant temple, carefully placing offerings of grain or fruit into a beautifully patterned basket. That same basket, with its sturdy, flexible construction, would then carry their personal provisions for the journey: bread, dried meat, a water skin, and perhaps the tools needed to make repairs along the way. This wasn't a case of reusing an old item for a new purpose. The duality was built into its very design from the outset. The materials chosen were a testament to deep environmental knowledge. Reeds, grasses, willow branches, and other flexible yet strong fibers were harvested at specific times of the year to ensure maximum durability. The weaving techniques themselves were often incredibly complex, employing patterns like twining or coiling that created a structure capable of bearing significant weight without collapsing, while still allowing the basket to flex and absorb shocks during travel over rough terrain. This resilience made them perfect for the unpredictable life on ancient trade routes, where a container needed to survive being loaded onto bumpy carts, carried on a person's back for miles, or stored in the hold of a rocking ship. What's truly fascinating is how the decorative elements, which we might dismiss as merely artistic, served to reinforce this practicality. The symbolic patterns woven into the sides, geometric designs representing clan identities, spiritual symbols for protection, or motifs of fertility, were not just painted on superficially. They were integral to the structure. Often, these patterns were created by using different colored fibers or by varying the weave itself at strategic points, which could actually strengthen the basket's walls at points of high stress, much like the reinforcing ribs in modern plastic containers. This meant the sacred symbolism and the physical durability were literally woven together into a single, inseparable object. Archaeologists find these baskets in the most telling of places, scattered along ancient trade networks like the Silk Road, discovered in the ruins of caravanserais, and even preserved in the dry tombs of Egypt, still holding their contents millennia later. Their presence in these contexts reveals their central role as engines of cultural exchange. A basket carrying spices from India to Rome wasn't just a container. It was a vessel for aroma, flavor, and ultimately, a piece of foreign culture. The basket itself, with its distinct regional weaving style, would have been an object of curiosity and a silent ambassador for the craftsmanship of its origin culture. Traders might barter for the contents and the container itself, leading to the cross-pollination of artistic ideas and practical techniques. A Celtic weaving pattern might eventually find its way into a basket in Anatolia, not through conquest, but through peaceful trade and the simple, universal need for a good container. This versatility made the sacred basket indispensable, especially for nomadic and mobile societies. Its lightweight compared to pottery or wood, its ability to be repaired easily with new fibers, and its collapsible nature in some designs made it the perfect technology for a life on the move. It was a trunk, a cupboard, a shopping bag, and a ritual altar, all in one elegantly simple form. This incredible object demonstrates that for our ancestors, the sacred was not separate from the journey of everyday life. It was carried with them, quite literally, holding both their offerings to the gods and the tools for their own survival. Now, let's shift our focus to an object that embodies raw power and skillful precision, the ritual axe. When we picture these artifacts from Minoan palaces or Viking burial sites, we often see them as fearsome symbols of authority, their blades gleaming with ornate inlays and their hafts carved with intricate depictions of gods and heroes. But to view them as merely ceremonial is to miss their deeper, more grounded story. These magnificent objects were, first and foremost, masterpieces of functional design, engineered for the demanding daily work of shaping the world. A Norse skegox or bearded axe recovered from a chieftain's grave might feature a blade etched with scenes from mythology, but its defining characteristic is its brilliantly practical shape. The extended lower edge, the beard, provided a dramatically elongated cutting surface while keeping the overall weight of the head manageable. This design allowed a craftsman to use it for incredibly precise woodworking, like shaping planks for a ship's hull or carving joints for a longhouse, with the beard offering a hooking point for pulling and shaping wood. The balance of the axe was paramount. A head that was too heavy would be exhausting to swing all day, while one that was too light would lack splitting force. Artisans achieved a perfect equilibrium, crafting a tool that felt like an extension of the user's own arm, capable of everything from felling a massive oak to performing the most delicate finishing work on a piece of furniture. This seamless blend of supreme utility and sacred art reveals a society that held the act of creation in the highest possible esteem. The ornate decorations weren't just for show, they were a form of tribute. By inlaying an axe head with silver symbols of Thor, the Norse god of strength and protection, a craftsman wasn't just beautifying his tool, he was invoking divine assistance for his work. He was acknowledging that the power to transform a raw tree into a seaworthy vessel or a sturdy home was a skill that bordered on the magical, a gift from the gods that demanded respect and gratitude. This integration provides a profound window into ancient labor practices, suggesting a world where there was no stark division between the artisan and the priest, or between manual labor and spiritual practice. The same individual who wielded the axe to build a temple was likely the one who carried it in the procession to consecrate that temple. This meant that the knowledge of materials, physics, and geometry was developed and refined not in abstract isolation, but through the sacred act of building community. The shared use of these high-quality, multi-purpose tools points to a collaborative economy of skill. A single, well-made ritual axe might be used by a master boat builder, a housewright, and a sculptor, its value increasing with each project it helped complete. It was a shared resource that elevated the entire community's capacity for construction and craft, turning individual labor into a collective achievement. This perspective challenges modern notions of ancient work as mere drudgery. Instead, it appears as a deeply integrated aspect of life where every stroke of the axe was both a practical act of survival and a spiritual act of creation. Moving from the grand, sweeping utility of ritual axes, we now focus on an object of intimate, personal care that reveals just as much about ancient ingenuity, the ceremonial comb. In many African and Asian traditions, these were not mere accessories for vanity but vital instruments of wellness, deeply woven into the fabric of daily life and spiritual practice. Crafted with astonishing artistry from materials like scented sandalwood, gleaming ivory, or richly dark ebony, these combs featured handles carved with protective deities, spiritual symbols, and intricate geometric patterns. Their primary role in rituals was to purify and prepare an individual, whether a chief before an important ceremony or a bride before her wedding, symbolizing the untangling of spiritual knots and the smoothing of one's path into a new phase of life. This act of ritual grooming was a powerful metaphor for moral and spiritual order, a way of presenting a clean and ordered self to the community and the gods. Yet the teeth of these beautiful objects were engaged in a constant, very practical battle for public health. In an era long before modern medicine, something as simple as a comb was a frontline defense against parasites like lice and ticks, which could spread typhus and other devastating illnesses. The precise spacing of the teeth was designed to mechanically remove these pests and their eggs from the hair and scalp, a crucial form of pest control in densely populated communal living spaces. Furthermore, the comb itself often acted as a delivery system for topical medicines. Healers would infuse the teeth with natural insect-repelling oils like neem, tea tree, or citronella, or use the comb to gently part the hair and apply soothing salves or antiseptic poultices directly to the scalp to treat fungal infections, sores, or skin conditions. This transformed a simple grooming tool into a precise medical instrument, one that addressed both prevention and treatment. The profound influence of these practices on early public health initiatives is unmistakable. The ritual emphasis on bodily purity naturally encouraged regular hygiene habits across the entire community. When cleanliness is framed not as a chore but as a sacred duty, compliance becomes a matter of cultural pride and spiritual necessity. This created a powerful, decentralized public health model where every individual, through their personal grooming rituals, participated in preventing the spread of contagion. The very materials chosen for these combs, like certain aromatic woods with natural antimicrobial properties, show an empirical understanding of hygiene that went beyond the mechanical. By elevating these practices to the level of ceremony, ancient cultures effectively encoded essential health protocols into their cultural DNA, ensuring that these life-preserving habits were passed down and reinforced through generations. This holistic view, which saw no separation between the health of the body and the purity of the spirit, provided a foundational philosophy that would much later inform more formalized concepts of public sanitation and preventive medicine. Now, let's turn our attention to an object whose voice could cut through the noise of daily life, organizing chaos into order and alerting entire communities to both celebration and crisis: the ritual bell. Far more than a simple noisemaker for religious ceremonies, these carefully crafted instruments were the central nervous system of many ancient towns and temples, a public address network powered by the human arm and the clarity of resonant metal. Imagine the deep, resonant tone of a massive bronze temple bell in ancient China, its sound waves rolling across the valley, reaching every home and field. That same sound that called the faithful to prayer also served as the town clock, marking the changing of the guard, the opening of the market, and the closing of the city gates with unerring regularity. This shared sonic schedule created a powerful, unifying rhythm for the entire community, synchronizing the daily activities of hundreds or even thousands of people long before the invention of mechanical timepieces. The bell's voice became the sound of social order, a daily reminder that everyone was part of a larger, coordinated whole. But the bell's role extended far beyond keeping time. It was a vital tool for public safety. In times of acute danger, its sound transformed from a measured rhythm into a frantic, urgent alarm. A specific, rapid, and continuous pealing might signal a fire breaking out in a densely packed village of wooden houses, rallying a bucket brigade to the source before the entire settlement could be consumed. A different, deeper, more ominous tolling could warn of an approaching raid or an invading army, giving farmers in the fields precious minutes to gather their families and livestock behind the safety of the walls. This ability to convey specific information through sound patterns was a form of early acoustic coding. The people knew what each pattern meant, a knowledge passed down through generations, just like the stories of the gods honored by the bell itself. This made the bellringer a figure of immense responsibility, a trusted individual whose alertness could mean the difference between safety and catastrophe. This intricate relationship between sacred sound and social function reveals a profound understanding of the physics of audio and the psychology of community. The bells themselves were marvels of metallurgical engineering, cast in specific shapes and alloys to produce tones that could travel for miles and be clearly distinguished from the general hubbub of daily life. Their placement in high bell towers or on elevated temple grounds wasn't just for symbolic prominence, it was a deliberate acoustic strategy to maximize their reach. This sophisticated use of sound tells us that ancient societies were highly attuned to their auditory environment. They understood that sound could be shaped, directed, and encoded with meaning to manage large groups of people with an efficiency that visual signals alone could never achieve in an era before widespread literacy. The ritual bell, therefore, stands as a powerful testament to the idea that social organization and spiritual practice were deeply intertwined, with the sacred object at the center ensuring that the community could not only worship together but could also work, live, and survive together as one. Imagine a priest in ancient Mesopotamia holding not a complex instrument but a simple, highly polished bronze plate. During a sacred ceremony, this object might be presented as an offering vessel, its surface gleaming in the firelight. Yet, when tilted towards the night sky, that same polished surface transformed into something far more profound, a precise astronomical tool, a primitive but effective mirror capable of capturing the faint light of a star or the precise angle of the moon. This elegant duality is a stunning example of how ancient rituals were woven with threads of hard, empirical science. These ceremonial plates, crafted from metal, obsidian, or even lacquered stone, were far more than ritual props. They were the sophisticated predecessors of the sextant and the astrolabe, allowing priest astronomers to make critical observations that governed the very rhythm of civilization. The process was deceptively simple. By carefully angling the plate, an observer could reflect the image of a celestial body onto a fixed point or a marked surface, allowing them to measure its altitude above the horizon with remarkable accuracy. This simple act of reflection unlocked the heavens. For agricultural societies, this knowledge was nothing short of survival. By tracking the sun's path across the seasons, noting its lowest point at the winter solstice and its highest at the summer solstice, priests could create incredibly accurate calendars. They could predict the coming of the spring rains, the optimal time for planting seeds, and the exact window for harvesting crops. This wasn't guesswork, it was a science encoded into ritual to ensure its preservation and correct execution. The ceremony surrounding the observation guaranteed that the same meticulous steps were followed year after year, generation after generation, turning astronomical data into a sacred, unbreakable tradition. This allowed societies to plan their agricultural cycles with a confidence that maximized yields and staved off famine. The same technology was a literal lifesaver for maritime cultures. Polynesian navigators embarking on voyages across thousands of miles of open ocean used polished stone tablets to chart the stars. By reflecting the light of key guide stars, they could hold a steady course to distant islands. The ritual of learning these star paths was a sacred initiation, and the plates themselves were revered objects because they held the knowledge that separated a successful voyage from a tragic disappearance into the endless blue. This merging of spirituality with navigation meant that this vital, hard-won knowledge was treated with the utmost respect and care, ensuring its accurate transmission. The polished ceremonial plate, therefore, stands as a powerful testament to a world where the quest to understand the gods and the quest to understand the universe were one and the same, driving advancements that fed nations and connected continents. Now consider the profound connection between survival and symbolism embodied in the ritual spear. Across the vast, sun-drenched landscapes of Aboriginal Australia and the boundless seascapes of Polynesia, these were not objects kept separate from the gritty realities of daily life. A spear used to honor a sea god in a morning ceremony might be the very same tool that secured the evening meal, its tip still bearing the faint scent of the ocean or the earth from its practical use. This was not a blurring of lines between the sacred and the profane, but rather a powerful declaration that the two were inseparable. The act of hunting and fishing was itself a sacred dialogue with nature, a reciprocal relationship where taking life to sustain life was approached with reverence, skill, and gratitude. The design of these spears is a masterclass in this philosophy. A Polynesian fishing spear, for instance, might feature a meticulously barbed point carved from sturdy bone or sharpened shell, engineered to securely hold a struggling fish. Yet, that same point could be intricately carved with patterns representing ocean currents or the tribe's ancestral guardian, transforming a lethal point into a narrative canvas. The shaft might be weighted and balanced for perfect flight when thrown at a darting tuna, but its length could also be marked with notches that told the story of great catches or successful hunts of the past. This combination ensured that every time a hunter grasped the spear, he was holding not just a tool, but the accumulated wisdom, history, and spiritual identity of his people. This duality fostered a deeply sustainable approach to resource use. Because the same spears were used in both ritual and hunting, they were crafted to last a lifetime and beyond, treated with care and respect that disposable tools would never receive. This mindset naturally encouraged a conservationist ethic. You did not overfish a sacred lagoon or recklessly hunt a species to extinction when your very method of taking life was intertwined with thanking the spirit of that life. The rituals performed with these spears often included songs and dances that reinforced this balance, celebrating the animal's sacrifice while also teaching the next generation about migration patterns, breeding seasons, and the importance of taking only what was needed. This ensured cultural continuity by embedding essential ecological knowledge directly into spiritual practice, making the lesson unforgettable. From these objects, we learn that ancient subsistence strategies were about far more than mere caloric intake. They were holistic systems of management that integrated practical skill with spiritual responsibility. The ritual spear was a tangible expression of a worldview that saw humanity as a part of nature's cycle, not apart from it. This profound understanding of balance and respect, where every tool carried the weight of both necessity and meaning, offers a powerful lesson in sustainable living that feels incredibly relevant to our modern world. After exploring the ritual spear's role in sustainable hunting, we arrive at perhaps the most profound fusion of all, the mask as a living library. In countless cultures that relied on oral tradition rather than written records, the ceremonial mask was far more than a disguise. It was a dynamic, multi-sensory teaching tool, a powerful technology for encoding and transmitting the entire knowledge system of a people. Imagine a community gathering under a starlit sky, the firelight dancing across the carved features of a mask representing a founding ancestor or a cunning trickster spirit. As the wearer begins to move and speak, the mask does not conceal the individual, it transforms them into a vessel for collective memory. The performance that unfolds is not mere entertainment. It is a vital lesson in history, ethics, and survival, made unforgettable through drama, emotion, and awe. This method of storytelling was neuroscience in action long before the field had a name. The brain is wired to remember information embedded in a narrative far more easily than dry facts or lists. By embodying a character, a legendary hunter who discovered a new water source, a foolish youth who ignored taboos and brought misfortune, or a benevolent spirit who taught the secrets of healing herbs, the masked performer created a vivid, emotional experience for the audience. The lesson was absorbed not just intellectually but viscerally. A child watching a masked elder reenact a dangerous encounter with a bear would internalize the survival strategies far more effectively than if they were simply told, "Be careful in the woods." The mask itself, with its exaggerated features and symbolic colors, served as a powerful mnemonic device, a visual trigger that helped recall the entire story and its moral. This ancient practice of immersive, experiential learning has profoundly influenced modern educational techniques. The entire concept of using role-playing and simulation in classrooms, where students act out historical events or scientific processes, is a direct echo of these masked rituals. Modern therapy, particularly psychodrama and certain forms of trauma treatment, uses masks and role-playing to allow individuals to safely explore different aspects of their personality or confront difficult experiences, much like the mask allowed a community to safely confront the lessons of a moral failing or a past tragedy. Furthermore, the effectiveness of these masks in preserving cultural wisdom highlights the enduring power of what educators now call non-formal learning, the acquisition of knowledge and skills through shared cultural activities rather than structured schooling. This challenges the modern over-reliance on textbooks and standardized tests. reminding us that some of the most enduring lessons are taught not through lectures, but through experience, emotion, and the powerful magic of a story brought to life. The ritual mask, therefore, stands as a timeless testament to the art of teaching itself, proving that the most effective education is one that engages the heart as deeply as the mind. What emerges from this journey through 24 objects is a powerful, unifying thread in the human story, our innate drive to find the sacred in the practical and to infuse our deepest beliefs with tangible, life-sustaining function. This was never about mere resourcefulness or clever recycling. It was a sophisticated worldview that saw no divide between the spiritual and the mundane. For our ancestors, a ritual was not an escape from reality but a deeper engagement with it. By weaving practicality into the very fabric of their ceremonies, they achieved something remarkable. They conserved precious materials in a world of scarcity, yes, but more importantly, they created a culture where every object, every action was layered with multiple meanings, ensuring that spiritual wisdom was constantly reinforced through daily use. This mindset was a profound engine of resilience. When your communication device is a sacred drum and your surgical tool is a ceremonial dagger, your most vital survival knowledge becomes protected, revered, and passed down through generations with unwavering fidelity. Innovation flourished under this system because it was directed by immediate need and spiritual purpose. The desire to build a temple that pleased the gods led to the precise surveying tools that could also fairly distribute farmland. The need to administer herbal medicine within a ritual context fostered an early understanding of anesthetics and psychosomatic healing. This symbiotic relationship between what we might now separate into science and religion created a holistic form of progress where technological advancement and spiritual depth grew together, each strengthening the other. The lessons for our modern society are both humbling and inspiring. In an age of hyper-specialization and disposable consumption, we have largely lost this integrated vision. Our tools are often single-purpose and divorced from any sense of meaning, and our rituals can sometimes feel disconnected from the gritty realities of survival. The ancient approach challenges us to reconsider this fragmentation. It invites us to ask how we might design our own lives and objects with this same duality in mind. How can our technologies not only serve a function but also nourish our communities and connect us to something larger? How can our daily practices be imbued with a sense of purpose that goes beyond mere efficiency? This perspective is a powerful blueprint for sustainable living, not just environmentally but culturally. It teaches us that sustainability is not about having less, but about meaning more. It's about creating objects and systems that are built to last, that are repairable, adaptable, and rich with story and significance. It's about recognizing that the most enduring solutions are those that address our physical needs and our spiritual yearnings simultaneously. The ancient world shows us that the greatest human innovations are those that serve the body and the soul, proving that true ingenuity lies not in complexity, but in this beautiful, purposeful blend. From the precision of surgical daggers to the cosmic guidance of polished astronomical plates, the story of these 24 objects reveals a fundamental truth about our ancestors. They saw the world not in separate categories of sacred and practical, but as a single, interconnected whole. This wasn't just clever recycling or making do with limited resources. It was a profound philosophy, a way of being that infused every aspect of life with multiple layers of meaning and purpose. Each artifact we've explored is a testament to a different facet of this brilliant, integrated mindset. A mindset that turned survival into ceremony and belief into actionable, everyday innovation. They understood that a tool used to build a community could also be used to honor the gods that protected it, and that an object that healed the body could also soothe the spirit. This duality wasn't a compromise, it was the highest form of efficiency, ensuring that nothing was wasted, especially wisdom. What can we, in our world of hyper-specialized gadgets and often disposable culture, learn from this ancient approach? Perhaps it's a powerful reminder that true sustainability isn't just about the materials we use, but about the meaning we assign to them. It challenges us to look at the objects in our own lives and ask, does this serve only one purpose? Could it be designed or used in a way that connects me more deeply to my community, my environment, or my own sense of purpose? The ancient world teaches us that the most enduring innovations are those that address our deepest human needs simultaneously: the need for safety, for connection, for meaning, and for wonder. They managed to weave all of these threads together into a stronger, more resilient fabric of culture. This exploration is far from over. Every time we look back with fresh eyes, we find another layer of ingenuity hidden in plain sight, waiting to be understood. History is not a static record of what was. It's a living conversation, and these objects are some of its most eloquent speakers. If this journey into the clever, practical minds of the past has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to keep that conversation going. Let us know in the comments which of these dual-purpose objects surprised you the most, or if you've encountered other fascinating examples of this beautiful blend of function and belief. And if you want to join us as we continue to uncover the hidden stories behind historical mysteries, please subscribe to the channel. Until our next adventure together, keep looking closely, asking questions, and finding the extraordinary ingenuity hidden within the ordinary artifacts of our shared human story.